In the words of the late George Carlin, BS is the glue that binds us together as a nation. Here comes a ton of it. It's time for BSing with Big Nate.
Welcome into another edition of BSing with Big Nate. I'm Big Nate, and we kicked this whole thing off when COVID-19 started. Everything was closing. Everything was being canceled. Recreational entertainment basically went away. We're now in phase two. Something that stood out to me was sports. We lost all sports except for professional wrestling. God knows why. But I'm not as qualified to talk about it as my guest today, the voice of the Highlanders, the Pulaski Yankees, and my dear friend, Rick, the Big Dog Watson. How you doing today, Rick?
I'm good. What's going on, Big Nate? In quotes.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm really more than anything just excited to see you and hear your voice again because, frankly, It's been a while. And what have you been up to in all of this time?
Trying to keep any semblance of sanity I can with 3 teenagers in my house throughout 3 months of finishing up their school year, and now as we head into the summer. So, I'm ready. I'm ready to get back to work, to say the least.
No, I'm excited for that as well. With us moving into phase 2, we've kind of seen a picture of what things are going to look like, and I want to start with baseball. Of course, right now the players and the owners are kind of disagreeing about salary and how that's going to work out, which I could have seen that from a mile away coming, is because they don't want their prorated salaries. The league doesn't want to spend all of the money they've got. My biggest concern takeaway, in May, they released the proposed rule changes, and I just want to talk about those for a little bit. Did you see the list of proposed rule changes?
Yeah, and it's almost as if the people that are in charge of the game hate the game in which they legislate. And I think Rob Manfred, it continues, week by week to kind of put the stamp on the fact that he's the worst commissioner we've seen really in any sport I can remember. And this, any rule changes, and then of course with the continual delay. You talk about being tone deaf. Between Major League Baseball and then the union, I can't imagine a league being more tone deaf to what really their fans really need right now, more than just want. They need baseball to return. But again, I've never seen people seemingly hate the sport in which they govern more than Major League Baseball.
It's almost, when I saw that list of rule changes, it's almost like they've never watched the game. The one that particularly stood out to me that I just saw absolutely preposterous, no way it's feasible, is every time the ball changes hands between multiple players, they need to change out the ball. Well, you've got your pitcher and your catcher. That right there is multiple. It's more than one.
New ball every time, right?
So how much longer is this going to make the game? Are we going to have to switch to 7 innings? The other one that really stood out to me is scoreboard video is prohibited, which is fine because they're going to start out without an audience in the stadium. So that's fine. That makes sense. But what I find particularly baffling is they're still going to do God Bless America. So that leads me to wonder, will we still have the full 7th inning stretch with Take Me Out to the Ball Game? If
I think
no
they
one
should
can
grab
go.
players. They should just make players and the managers, just alternate. Don't even bring a singer in. Who has the best pipes, and you can belt out God Bless America in the 7th inning.
They can make that work. You just have, and then at the end of the season, you have all the fans vote and get the fans involved, and you can have a World Series of best Take Me Out to the Ball Game. What have you been watching and doing?
What have I been watching? A lot of old games, to be honest. I've been watching. I have a bunch of games recorded. I'm a lifelong Broncos fan. I have a bunch of old Super Bowl. I'm watching all the Super Bowls again, and some Radford basketball games. I've been watching those again on ESPN Plus, just things like that. Because really, there's so little on television, as you know, to offer. I mean, there's some Netflix things that I've tried. I was always a huge Parks and Rec fan, so I've been going back and just watching those again. Anything to create some kind of levity from the constant nothingness.
My dad has started watching old, like, he's at the point where he's rewatching the Tour de France from years ago.
It was
Why? Why would you do that to yourself?
Lance had to give back. Was that?
I'm certain it was one of them. I think one of the ones he watched was like the year that like the top 8 had to give back their.
They were all doping.
Yeah, they were all doping. But something that I was fortunate enough to relive and rewatch throughout all of this was the Washington Nationals World Series win last year, and it stands out to me that baseball, even if the game is old, even if you've seen it, even if you know the outcome, there's still that level of excitement. And like you were saying, that's something we need back more than anything right now. This country kind of needs the national pastime. We need that nostalgia. We need that sensation of camaraderie. And the league's just throwing it away. I feel with that and the potential cutting of teams throughout minor leagues, do you think we'll even have a baseball season this year?
The latest results of yesterday, when you had the players want to play games because obviously they want to be paid more. The players seem to identify with the fans much better than the owners, even though that's the fans that the owners really, they have to have the fans or they can't do all the things they want. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the owners seem to forget that. But the players want the longer season. And this preposterous 50-game season the owners apparently wanted to play, that with the fact this 5-round draft, which is just absolutely ludicrous in my mind. No reasoning behind that at all. So no, my answer right now is I'm very skeptical. I thought they would fall in line. The NBA and the NHL figured it out, and they've come up with some really cool-looking adjustments here with the 22 teams down in Orlando.
Yeah.
NBA did, that was well done, well conceived. And then the NHL's got their playoffs here with the 24. I think those leagues get it, they understand it, and Major League Baseball, as it seems like is always the case, is just left out of it because they continue just to implode. And it's almost as if they raise their arm the highest. Who wants to implode worse today, the player side or the owner's side? And I think they both take equal blame right now.
I'm wondering, you bring up the NHL and the NBA, and I'm wondering how this is going to look for the NHL with coming back into the next season fairly soon after going through that playoff run. So you've got that group of teams isn't going to be performing as best at the beginning of the season. Granted, I've said for years that the NHL doesn't really get exciting until after the All-Star break because that's when it really gets into gear. But I am intrigued to see how the NHL and the NBA work this out. But speaking of basketball, Radford University announced earlier this week that they are coming back early. What is it, July 27th, I believe?
Yeah, and August 3rd will be when classes begin. I believe that's the date. So very optimistic. And I want to give kudos to, President Hemphill, because it seems like everybody wants to promote as much negativity as they can about whatever this has been. We've had to wait through with the alleged pandemic. And I think with President Hemphill, he's shown leadership throughout all this and been very optimistic. So it's been good to see that he's taken the bull by the horn and he's saying, look, he understands the value of it. Students need to be on campus. And it's nice to see that Radford's really been kind of the front runner of saying, look, this is when we're going back. Now several other state schools have followed suit. So it's a good plan. I think getting folks back sooner is going to be good because this is just so unnatural to be told that we can't do anything when there doesn't seem to be as much science behind it as opposed to politics. But that's a topic for another day. But from Radford's perspective, yes, coming back earlier I think is a good thing.
I 100% agree. I think Hemphill's handled this all with great stride, and I definitely am admirable of the way things have been handled. The reason I bring up RU though is in case you guys didn't know, Rick is the voice of the Highlanders. I've had the privilege of working with Rick for several years now as his studio producer. And, we had college basketball ended early for us.
It did.
So I know they're going to be looking forward to trying. I mean, we got to have a March Madness next year. We got to have
There
basketball.
will be.
So is there any rumblings, any looking ahead to that? Because I know they've started to look at recruitment weekends. They've started to look at stuff like that. So, what's it look like for RU basketball in the fall?
Well, I think in terms of fall sports, the conversations I've been involved with the administration is, we're planning to go. You're looking at men's and women's soccer and volleyball and cross country. Those sports are going to have seasons. It depends on, we don't know the adjustment of fans that are going to be allowed, things like that. It may just be students and family. There's some things that'll be announced. But since those sports aren't money sports, if you will, those aren't really sports that you have to buy a ticket for. I think in terms of that happening, that's going to be the first sign to see how that goes. How comfortable will coaches and students be getting back close to one another and just doing what they have always done, practice and get ready for the season. So I think the fall is going to be kind of the guinea pig for the rest of it. From a national perspective, they will play college football. They can't not play college football. Yeah. Because college athletics as we know it would no longer exist at any level if they don't have the revenue created by college football. So how that's going to look, I'm not sure, but conversations I've had with folks from Power 5 schools, it's going to be a go. We just don't know how it's going to be packaged. And hopefully, once we get into the winter, basketball starting, practice in October and November, by then, hopefully some of this will be relaxed and we can start to feel some sense of normal because if you just look at the national numbers, all the threat of this thing seems to be on a worldwide downslope. I think it's especially true here in this country. So hopefully by then you can kind of let common sense take over, take care of one another just like you would if you were trying to avoid any kind of other illness and live our lives. And I think right now I'm very optimistic. Basketball might be a slight adjustment here and there, but I think basketball season will happen as close to normal as you can have it, I hope.
No, you haven't heard any rumblings of a rule change involving every time multiple players handle the ball, we got to get rid of it?
No.
Like I remember seeing that and I was thinking, well, that would never work for basketball. That would never work for football because that's just impossible. We're not going to have basketball players out there wearing gloves either.
Well, look what's going on now. The UFC's been going on, right? You mentioned, even though it's entertainment, professional wrestling's been going on. The European, there's certain soccer leagues that have been playing. Things are happening. The Korean baseball league is happening, and we see it going off without a. Guys are very happy to be playing. There's no problem with it. You mentioned there's no fans right now. I don't think that would be the look if you're talking about college football or basketball, but it can happen. It's just who's going to be willing to do that. And right now, the NBA and the NHL seem to understand that's the direction we're heading. The NFL never stopped, right? They just kept going. They kept having, they did their entire draft. They did everything. It was virtual and it was very well done, but they've kind of led the way through all this. They haven't had anything canceled. They made adjustments. But I think once you see the NBA and the NHL hopefully proceed very successfully here, once they get going again, that's going to show everybody else, okay, it's time now that we now have our example of what we need to do so we can all start going forward.
Yeah, it seems like our gut reaction, our knee-jerk reaction to this was to just cancel everything. The one that really baffles me is NASCAR postponing races because your entire pit crew, your entire crew is wearing helmets and fire suits. Like, other than your spotters, most everyone's got a helmet on. And it's not really like they're wearing gloves, they've got protection. It seems like NASCAR could have kept going and just said, hey, just don't have fans in the stands. And they've gone that direction. They're doing it now. So I guess kudos to them for realizing that, hey, we probably don't need to cancel this.
Well, they've been used to fans, and let's be honest, they've been used to not having fans in the stands for the last couple of seasons anyway. So, and the decline of the popularity of it. But, I'll give them credit. They were the first ones, right? They came back and had that first race, and the whole world was watching, especially the American sports world. And that's when you started to see these conversations kind of evolve with basketball and with the hockey. And they said, okay, well, they've pulled it off, as you said, and everybody's fine. Competition's the spirit of competition. So I'll give them their credit. They were the first to come back. But you're right. I mean, it shouldn't have had to have been that way. They could have taken maybe, a couple weeks off. We have the helmets. Fans aren't coming. Okay, let's just get back to the schedule. I thought, yeah, you're right. The fact that the first inclination is to just stop and do nothing seems like that totally contradicts what, as humanity we've been doing since the day the earth was created.
So I have to ask, have you been in contact with Coach Jones?
A little bit, now and then. He and obviously a lot of our former players, I've been talking to them with everything that's going on in the world with the just inhumane murder of George Floyd. I mean, it's a different perspective obviously going on, and I see the things on social media. It's something that, let's be honest, you and I can't understand. We can be sympathetic and saddened and sickened by it, but we can never ever relate to what Coach Jones still feels, I'm sure. Not speaking for him, but on a daily basis. But I have spoken to several of our players about it, former players that have come through, and we have a great conversation. As a matter of fact, it's going to show up on our website that I did with Keon Brown about all this. And I think people need to take the time to watch all 20 minutes of it and listen to his perspective, and maybe you'll understand a little bit better as to why you're seeing the outrage that you are. But, I know Coach Jones, I talked to him around Easter, and he was doing fine. And I know he's been traveling as much as he can, and it's a whole new team. We lost everybody. Yeah. They're all gone. So except for a couple of guys. So he's going to have at least a 6-person recruiting class. And I know he's been very busy with his coaches, still recruiting virtually. And they've been able to get, I think since this whole thing started, Nate, I think they've been able to get 3 or 4 commitments for this class. So we're going to have a bunch of new guys, and I know everybody's getting ready to get excited to get back into the gym here, hopefully over the summer with workouts, and get everybody acclimated to being a Radford basketball player.
I don't know if you read my mind there, or we just have that bond, but I wasn't even going to the George Floyd yet. That was going to be a follow-up. Very, very important. And I'm glad you said what you said. I think it's important to understand that we don't have that same perspective, and we can't, I've been following this, I've been watching, and I've just been angry about the whole situation and the injustice that's being suffered, and I'm not even living it. So I'm thankful that I'm able to have that perspective in those interactions, and I'm glad that you're talking to the players about it, and that stuff's going to be coming about. So I'm going to be sure to share that once that hits, because I do think it's incredibly important. But my other concern there was Coach Jones. Every conversation I've ever had with him, his mind is always on basketball. So I was making sure he was okay, and still. So yeah, that sounds about like what I expected for Coach Jones, that he's still looking forward, looking ahead, and that's exciting stuff. I can't wait for us to get basketball back and get back to working on some sports.
I'm just excited that Mike's back with us. He was a candidate for a couple of jobs, and it looked like maybe he had one and we weren't going to have him around anymore. But he followed his heart and came back to Radford. So we're very excited. We kept 2 of the Joneses, right? We kept Mike, and obviously we kept Miles, who was on the team last year. We lost one, but Carly Jones and his magnificent talents, and a guy who's going to be an NBA player. It's just a matter of when. We want to wish him the best as he takes on this final year of eligibility, his graduate year down at Louisville. And, he's penciled in to be a starter, and I've spoken to him a few times, and he picked a place that he just felt like he could come in and make an immediate impact and help his stock even more. And he did so much for Radford basketball, and he's hit the biggest shot in the history of Radford basketball, and that's going to be his legacy. And knowing the kind of young man he is, he's going to succeed in the ACC, and folks will get excited if they get a chance to watch Louisville play. Hopefully they come to Blacksburg. I haven't seen any kind of scheduling and things like that, but so keeping 2 out of the 3 of the Jones is not too bad when you saw what was laid out there, and could have lost a lot more than just a bunch of players, because he could have lost Mike, and we could have lost the coaching staff. So I'm just grateful that those guys are going to be back, and I've talked to them about it. They're excited about the new crop of players. It's going to be fun. Newness can be fun, frustrating and fun, especially if you're a head coach. But I know Mike will, as he always does, he'll mold these guys into being a Big South championship caliber team.
To a certain degree, I feel like the universe just likes to throw challenges at Coach Jones because he's really good at adapting and handling change, and so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this basketball season, and of course, as always, if you'll have me again, Rick, I would love to be your studio producer.
Oh, there's no question about that. I think the ink hasn't come out on the contract yet, but that's part of my deal. So I mean, I think we're a package deal. So
I think that's the best way to sell us.
I think that's the exact best way to sell it. Even though I missed your wedding.
I forgive you for that. You had important things going on.
I did.
Thank you so much for coming on, Rick.
No, it was fun, man. Thanks for having me. Anytime.